To become truly irresistible, a woman must first embark on the most sacred and often the most terrifying journey of all, the journey inward. She must learn to meet not just her light but her shadow, the parts of herself she has hidden, rejected, denied, or shamed, the anger she was told not to express, the desires she learned to suppress, the fears that wrap themselves in silence, the envy, the guilt, the impulses, the wounds, all the aspects society told her were unacceptable. And yet, it is in facing these exact dimensions of herself that she becomes whole. The shadow is not evil. It is merely the unseen. It is not the enemy. It is the forgotten. It is the cry of the inner child, the scream behind the polite smile, the chaos beneath the curated perfection. A woman who dares to look her shadow in the eye is not collapsing. She is awakening. She is peeling back layers of conditioning. She is liberating her psyche from the tyranny of repression. She understands that every human has a shadow. The difference is most people run from it. They wear masks. They live in performance. They chase approval. But this woman, she no longer plays the game. She has sat with her pain until it became her teacher. She has listened to the whispers of her emotional scars and found wisdom in their echoes. She has felt her rage, not as destruction but as truth. She has held her grief, not as weakness but as depth. She has explored her jealousy, not to judge it but to ask, what part of me feels unloved? She is no longer frightened by what arises from within because she has created space for it. Space to observe without shame, space to feel without fleeing, space to be human, not perfect. A woman who owns her shadow is not ruled by it. She does not project it onto others. She does not sabotage her relationships, her career, her peace through unconscious patterns. She does not blame the world for what lives inside her. Instead, she reclaims it. She transforms it. She brings light to her darkness, and in doing so, becomes more powerful than those who cling to the illusion of purity. This woman becomes emotionally sovereign. She no longer needs others to validate her feelings because she validates herself. She does not suppress her truth to avoid conflict because she knows unspoken pain becomes buried resentment. She has learned to hold duality. She can be soft and fierce, kind and angry, loving and boundaried. She is complex, not confused. She is multidimensional, not unstable. And when she walks into a room, people can sense it. Not because she speaks the loudest, or dresses the boldest, or performs confidence, but because her presence feels grounded. She feels safe. Not because she never feels fear, but because she doesn't run from it. Her calm is not passive, it is earned. Her self-assurance is not arrogance, it is integration. Most people are exhausting because they are hiding. They are trying to keep their shadow locked away, and it leaks through their smile, their over-explaining, their quiet desperation to be accepted. But the woman who has met her shadow does not leak, she radiates. There is no desperate need to be understood, because she understands herself. There is no grasping for love, because she has stopped abandoning the parts of herself she once deemed unworthy. She has stopped pretending to be the good girl, the perfect partner, the always agreeable friend. She has learned that repression is not peace. It is a prison. So she gives herself permission to be whole, even if that means being misunderstood, even if that means being too much, even if that means being real in a world addicted to the artificial. Owning the shadow is not an event. It is a lifelong devotion. It is not a performance. It is a process. It requires humility. It requires courage. It requires solitude. But through this sacred inner alchemy, the mature woman becomes something rare. She becomes psychologically mature, spiritually alive, and emotionally clear. She does not chase transformation, she becomes it. Not through affirmations, but through truth. Not through external validation, but through internal confrontation. The shadow she once feared becomes the doorway to her magnetism, because nothing is more irresistible than a woman who has faced herself and refused to look away. There is an immense difference between reacting and responding, and the mature woman has come to understand this difference through deep inner observation. Reaction is impulsive. It is fast, unconscious, often driven by unhealed emotions and survival instincts. Reaction comes from the wound. It seeks to defend, to attack, to control. Response, on the other hand, is a function of presence. It arises from awareness, from intentionality, from the quiet mind that is not enslaved by emotion, but instead observes it with curiosity and compassion. When someone speaks harshly to her, the reactive woman immediately retaliates. She raises her voice, defends her honor, or internalizes the insult and makes it a reflection of her worth. But the mature woman does something rare. She pauses. She has trained herself, not through force but through inner discipline, to wait before speaking, to breathe before acting, to observe before deciding. She is not quick to anger because she has examined the roots of her triggers. She does not personal every slight because she understands that what others project often has little to do with her and everything to do with their own unresolved struggles. This does not mean she is passive. It does not mean she tolerates abuse or diminishes herself to avoid conflict. On the contrary, she is fierce in her clarity. But her fierceness is not loud. It is not chaotic. It is rooted in a deep inner stability. When she sets boundaries, she does so without rage. When she speaks her truth, it is without the need to overpower. Her energy speaks before her words do. She has nothing to prove, and that is what makes her powerful. The woman who responds rather than reacts has cultivated emotional intelligence. She understands the language of her inner world. She knows when her body is signaling danger, when her ego is crying out for recognition, when her inner child is longing to be seen. She listens to these signals, but she does not allow them to dictate her behavior blindly. She knows that maturity is not the absence of emotion, but the capacity to hold emotion without letting it control her. In this way, she becomes a sanctuary in times of chaos. Others are drawn to her calm, not because she is detached or unaffected, but because she is centered. She can be in the midst of conflict and still access clarity. She can feel anger without becoming cruel. She can feel pain without collapsing into victimhood. Her responses are deliberate, thoughtful, grounded in self-respect and compassion for others. This is not something she was born with. It is something she cultivated through years of inner work, of pausing, of failing, of learning. The reactive mind thrives on drama. It seeks out emotional stimulation, often without even knowing it. The mature woman has weaned herself off this addiction. She no longer finds comfort in emotional chaos. She does not need to win arguments or prove her superiority. Her self-worth is not tethered to being right. Her dignity is not conditional on others' behavior. Because she no longer reacts from insecurity, she rarely finds herself entangled in unnecessary conflict. And when she is hurt, she does not rush to punish. She feels the pain fully, processes it in solitude if needed, and returns to the situation with perspective. This makes her rare. It makes her trustworthy. People feel safe around her because they know she is consistent. She will not erupt unpredictably, nor will she disappear in silence. Her response is not dictated by the emotions of the moment, but by the integrity of her character. To respond instead of react requires a kind of self-possession that is forged over time. It requires knowing oneself deeply, understanding where one's reactions come from, what wounds they stem from, and what fears they activate. The mature woman has looked into these depths. She has asked herself the hard questions. She has caught herself mid-reaction and chosen a different path. Again and again, she has returned to awareness, even when it would have been easier to lash out or shut down. This is not a performance of grace, it is the embodiment of it. Her presence is not a mask. It is a reflection of her inner order. She has stopped allowing others to dictate her inner state. Her calm is not for show, it is hard-won. It is a rebellion against the culture of instant gratification, emotional volatility, and reactive living. She knows that reaction drains power, while response preserves it. By choosing to respond instead of react, she honors her emotions without being ruled by them. She reclaims her autonomy from the patterns of her past. She steps out of the cycle of conflict and into the field of conscious communication. Her silence is not withdrawal. It is wisdom choosing the right moment. Her words are not impulsive. They are intentional. Her decisions are not made to soothe the ego. They are guided by deeper vision. Within every woman lies a quiet war between two sacred forces, the feminine and the masculine. For centuries, these energies have been misunderstood, divided, and distorted. But the mature woman no longer chooses one and rejects the other. She does not live in imbalance. She does not outsource her wholeness. Instead, she becomes the union of both energies within herself. She honors the grace of the feminine and the discipline of the masculine. She holds space for her intuition, while trusting in her logic. She listens to her emotional depth, while also standing firm in rational clarity. This woman has realized that the feminine is not weakness, nor is the masculine dominance. She has unlearned the lies that told her she must abandon her softness to be strong, or silence her structure to be loved. She sees through the illusion that one must conquer the other. Instead, she has created an inner partnership, a sacred marriage between two polarities that dance through her spirit, her decisions, her very way of being. When she flows, she does not feel guilt for not achieving. When she leads, she does not shrink her sensitivity. Her power is not in choosing sides, but in becoming the bridge. The mature woman has taken the time to understand these energies, not as stereotypes, but as archetypes. She understands the feminine as the force of creation, receptivity, nurture, intuition, and feeling. She understands the masculine as the force of structure, direction, discipline, action, and logic. She knows when to lean into her feminine energy, when to listen, when to receive, when to feel, when to be still. She knows when to activate her masculine, when to decide, when to move forward, when to hold boundaries, when to act. She does not suppress either force, she gives each its rightful place. In doing so, she becomes dynamic, multidimensional whole. In a world that pressures women to be one-dimensional, either endlessly nurturing or perpetually productive, she breaks the mold. She no longer overfunctions in one energy out of trauma. She has stopped over-mothering, over-pleasing, overachieving in hopes of worth. She has recognized that imbalance is not love, it is compensation, so she no longer compensates. She aligns. Her inner masculine does not dominate her inner feminine, it protects her. It gives shape to her vision, boundaries to her love, direction to her dreams. Her inner feminine does not weaken her masculine, it breathes life into it. It softens his rigidity, brings compassion to his goals, adds soul to his mission. Together, these energies do not cancel each other, they complete each other. This woman walks with a presence that confuses those who live in duality. She is both decisive and tender. She can command a room and comfort a child. She can lead a company and nurture a garden. She is not fragmented. She is integrated, and that integration becomes the source of her magnetic presence. She no longer seeks a partner to fill what she believes is missing. She does not chase lovers to feel protected or validated. She brings protection to herself. She validates her own soul. And in doing so, any relationship she enters not from lack, but from overflow. This level of inner balance requires work. Soulful, honest, sometimes painful work. The mature woman has looked at where she over-identified with one energy at the expense of the other. She has questioned the patterns that made her believe she must always serve or always control. She has peeled back the layers of social conditioning, cultural expectations, and generational wounds, and she has rebuilt herself on the foundation of truth. Her feminine has stopped waiting to be rescued. Her masculine has stopped striving to earn love. Instead, they serve each other inside her. This deep inner union reflects in every area of her life. In business, she is both strategic and heart-led. In relationships, she is both open and self-possessed. In solitude, she is both reflective and empowered. She does not suppress her sensuality to be taken seriously. She does not dim her intellect to be adored. She brings all of herself, every layer, every energy, every wisdom, to the table. And it is this fullness that makes her radiant. She does not need to shout for attention or overcompensate for validation. Her mere presence speaks of balance. Her energy feels like both home and fire, both moonlight and armor, both womb and sword. Where most people lives split between extremes, she lives in harmony. Where others seek power through dominance, she finds power in alignment. She is not trying to become someone. She is remembering who she before she was taught to divide herself. In that remembrance, she finds freedom. And in that freedom, she becomes undeniable. In a world that never stops talking, silence has become an endangered species. Men are surrounded by noise, from devices, from obligations, from the endless scroll of other people's opinions. The world demands speed, performance, visibility. It says, move faster, be more, show more, respond immediately. And in that pressure, a man begins to lose the very thing that made him a man to begin with, his inner stillness. This stillness is not the absence of movement. It is the presence of depth. It is the quiet in the center of the storm. It is the ancient place inside the soul that does not need validation, that does not chase applause, that does not flinch in the presence of the unknown. Stillness is not passivity. It is presence. It is the unwavering ability to remain rooted when everything around you demands your distraction. Most men have never truly encountered it, not because it is rare, but because it is buried. Under obligation, under conditioning, under noise. There is a message that comes only through stillness, a message that no man can afford to ignore. What you are looking for in the world will never be found in the world. It is already within you, but you must be quiet enough to hear it. This is not poetry. It is truth spoken in the language of the soul. a truth that requires a man to stop running, not from responsibility, not from failure, but from himself. Every man carries within him a deep ache, a longing he cannot quite name. He seeks to soothe it with success, with attention, with sensation. He thinks if he achieves enough, earns enough, is admired enough, the ache will dissolve, but it does not. Because the ache was never external. It was the echo of stillness calling him back to himself. A man can accumulate the world and still feel empty. He can be surrounded by people and still feel alone. Not because the world has failed him, but because he has not yet returned home to his own center. Stillness is where that return begins. It is where the masks fall off, where the ego loosens its grip, where the noise of identity collapses into the truth of being. In stillness, a man sees clearly, not just the world but himself. He sees the patterns he has inherited, the lies he has told himself to survive, the distractions he has elevated into necessity. He sees how much of his life has been spent avoiding the very place that would heal him. And he understands, perhaps for the first time, that the quiet is not empty, it is full of answers. But stillness is not granted, it must be chosen. A man must carve it out of the chaos. He must turn away from the seductive pull of productivity and enter a space where nothing is demanded of him, except truth. He must sit with himself, without a screen, without a task, without a role to play. And in that sitting, all the emotions he's buried will rise. The regrets, the grief, the unspoken dreams, the unconscious fears. They come not to destroy him, but to be seen, because what is not seen cannot be healed. And what is not healed will quietly rule a man's life from the shadows. The modern man is taught that doing equals value, that to stop is to fall behind, that rest is laziness, that stillness is weakness. But this is a lie. The deepest strength is found not in acceleration, but in alignment. And alignment requires reflection. Reflection requires stillness. It is only in the space between doing that a man can ask the questions that matter. Who am I when I am not performing? What matters when no one is watching? What have I been avoiding by staying busy? These questions do not have easy answers, but they do have honest ones. And honesty is the beginning of sovereignty. A man who cannot sit still is a man who is still being ruled by his impulses, his wounds, his past. But a man who can sit in silence, who can face himself without flinching, without needing to distract or explain, that man is dangerous. Not because he is violent, but because he is free. Stillness sharpens a man's instincts. It recalibrates his sense of truth. It teaches him when to speak and when to remain silent, when to act and when to wait, when to let go and when to hold the line. In a world of constant reaction, the still man responds. He chooses rather than reacts. He listens rather than shouts. And because he is not owned by urgency, he cannot be manipulated by it. There is a kind of suffering that emerges not from failure, but from comparison. A man looks to his left, then to his right. He sees others moving faster, winning louder, living larger. He begins to measure his worth not by the depth of his soul, but by the visibility of his progress. And in this distorted mirror, he starts to believe a lie am behind. This lie is quiet but corrosive. It seeps into his mornings, turns ambition into anxiety, and poisons the sacred rhythm of his own becoming. But there is a message, unspoken and ancient, that breaks this illusion like light breaking through fog. You are not lost. You are already becoming. The masculine psyche, by nature, is forward-leaning. It is drawn toward expansion, toward conquest, toward the next mountain to climb. This is not a flaw, it is a divine instinct. But when this drive is not rooted in presence, it mutates into urgency. And urgency, when unexamined, becomes self-rejection. A man begins to live in the gap between who he is and who he thinks he should be. That gap becomes shame, and shame, once internalized, turns progress into punishment. But the truth is this: the becoming has already begun. Not at the summit, not after the breakthrough, not when the goal is finally achieved, but here, in the silent work, in the invisible disciplines, in the days no one sees. Growth is not loud, it is quiet. A seed does not scream as it splits underground. A tree does not announce its height each morning. Real transformation is subtle, sacred, slow. A man forgets this because the world does not celebrate the internal. It celebrates outcomes. It celebrates what can be seen, counted, commodified. But becoming is not a performance. It is an unfolding. And every man is unfolding at the pace his soul requires. He may wish to move faster. He may pray for the results to come sooner. But deep down, some part of him knows he is not ready yet. Not because he is lazy, but because something within him is still forming, still strengthening, still preparing to hold what he's asking for. The soul does not rush. It does not care for deadlines or external timelines. It values depth over speed, integration over appearance, truth over spectacle. And so, the man who is awake must learn to trust not just the path, but his place on it. He must look not just forward, but inward. He must ask not, why am I not there yet? But, what am I learning here? Because here is not a mistake. Here is where life is chiseling him into the man who can handle what is next. To be becoming is to be in motion even when you feel still. It is to be shaped by the unseen. It is to trust that the pain, the delay, the detours, and the silences are not wasted, but woven. Every challenge that does not destroy you is shaping you. Every closed door is preserving you. Every long night is deepening you. There is no part of the journey that is meaningless. There is only the illusion of stagnation, but the soul knows better. The world may not understand this. It will continue to demand proof. It will ask you to quantify your value, to justify your pace, to produce results. But you do not answer to the world. You answer to the truth within you. And the truth is this: no one can outrun their becoming. You can only slow it by refusing to trust it and your freedom. You can only distort it by measuring it through the eyes of others. But you cannot stop it. Because the moment you began to seek more, the becoming began. There is sacred power in remembering this. It is the difference between waking up with dread and waking up with reverence, between resenting the process and respecting it, between living from lack and living from alignment. The man who knows he is becoming does not need to rush. He moves with authority, even in uncertainty. He walks with patience, even in pain, because he knows something that cannot be taught. He is not waiting to become a man. He is already becoming one. The evidence may not be visible yet, but it is felt in the way he keeps showing up, in the way he keeps choosing discipline over ease, truth over comfort, growth over validation. His life is not a straight line. It is a spiral, always bringing him back to deeper versions of the same truthing, that who he is now is not who he was yesterday, and who he is becoming tomorrow is being shaped right now, in the silence, in the struggle, in the sacred ordinary. Each morning is more than just the beginning of another day. It is a sacred threshold, a moment when the soul stands between what has been and what could be. And in that space, 7 messages arrive, not from outside, but from within. They are not ordinary affirmations or fleeting motivations. They are ancient truths that stir something deep in the mind. They speak directly to the core of a man, to the parts of him he cannot quite name, but has always felt. These are not messages crafted to impress. They are invitations, silent calls to awaken what lies dormant beneath the surface of daily routine. They remind a man that he is not here to perform, to compare, or to outrun himself. He is here to remember his strength, not as force, but as responsibility. To remember his worth, not in what he produces, but in what he embodies. To remember that his path is his own, and that he does not walk it alone, but with the presence of a deeper knowing guiding each step. To hear these messages is to rise not just from sleep, but from forgetfulness. It is to reclaim the parts of the soul that have been numbed by noise, dulled by doubt, and buried under distraction. It is to choose, once again, the harder path, the path of inner alignment over external applause, of integrity over image, of becoming over achieving. No man can ignore these messages because they are not spoken to him. They are spoken from within him, and every time he listens, something stirs, something reawakens. Not a version of himself imposed by the world, but the truth of who he has always been beneath the noise, the warrior, the visionary, the seeker, the soul. And so, each morning becomes not just a beginning, but a return to stillness, a return to the fight that matters, a return to the rhythm of his own unfolding. Because a man who begins his day rooted in these truths cannot be easily shaken. He is no longer driven by fear or urgency, but by